However, since they weren't alive anymore, and I knew if I didn't do it perfectly, there would be consequences, I had no choice but to do them and try to do them well. Once, I forgot to iron one of Henry's shirts. When he found out, he threw the shirt in my face and told me to get it right, or else I'd be dead. I spent hours ironing every single shirt in his closet, terrified of what would happen if I missed a wrinkle. The worst punishment came when I was 10. It was winter, and the heater had broken. The house was freezing, and I'd accidentally brought snow from my shoes into the hallway after shoveling the driveway.
Do you think this is a barn? Clean it up, fool.
I wanted to grab a mop, but Martha stopped me.
No, you're going to learn to be more careful.
She forced me to kneel on the cold, wet tiles and scrub the floor with a toothbrush. My hands were red and raw from the icy water, but she didn't care. He laughed. He laughed even harder after Martha told him what my offense was. Maybe we should make him sleep out in the shed. That'll teach him to appreciate what he's got. And that's exactly what they did. That night, they locked me in the shed with nothing but a thin blanket and a bottle of water. The wind howled outside, and I curled up in a corner, trying to stay warm. I could see my breath in the darkness, and my fingers were so numb I couldn't feel them. When I was 7, my world fell apart. My parents were everything to me, kind, loving, and the only family I had ever known. We weren't wealthy, but we were happy. My dad worked long hours as a mechanic, and my mom was a nurse who always made time to help with my homework, no matter how tired she was. One rainy night, while my parents and I were heading back home, we got into a fatal accident. When I woke up in the hospital, I was told my parents hadn't made it. A drunk driver had taken them from me. I screamed and cried until my throat was raw, but it didn't bring them back. All I had left were their wedding rings, handed to me in a small plastic bag, and a cold, suffocating void in my chest. My aunt and uncle, Martha and Henry, were my only living relatives. They came to the hospital and took me home with them. At first, I thought they were doing it out of love or duty. But it didn't take long to realize they didn't want me. I was just an obligation, an extra mouth to feed, a disruption to their carefully curated lives. Their house was different from ours. It was big and spotless, with furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. I was too afraid to touch anything. I cried a lot, but I was always stopped.
Stop crying. You're too old for that nonsense.
Uncle Henry didn't say anything, but his glare said enough. I learned to swallow my sobs and forced myself to be quiet. That was the first lesson they taught me. It wasn't long before the punishment started. Martha had a strict set of rules, and breaking even one of them was enough to set her off.
You look like that crazy late mother of yours didn't give you any training. If you dare to cause trouble here, I'll send you to be with them.
I was scared. I didn't want to die. Martha and her husband were very scary. I was afraid that she could truly kill me if she wanted to, so I tried hard to follow her rules. However, much didn't seem to be on my side at that time. One evening, I accidentally spilled a glass of water on the kitchen counter. It wasn't a big mess, just a small puddle, but Martha acted like I'd destroyed her entire house.
Look at this. You're useless, just like your father was. Clean it up now. Oh my God, why did I even bring you here? I knew you would be troubled, you stupid child.
I grabbed a rag and wiped it up as fast as I could, but it wasn't enough. She grabbed me by the arm, her nails digging into my skin, and dragged me into the living room where Henry was watching TV.
Henry, show this idiot what happens when he can't follow simple instructions.
Henry took off his belt and folded it. I couldn't stop screaming and crying as he flogged me mercilessly. Keep quiet. You'll take it like a man. I don't know how many times the belt came down, but by the end of it, my back was on fire, and I'd lost my voice after crying too much. It hurt so much, yet Martha and her husband seemed to love seeing me in pain.
Maybe now you'll think twice before making a mess.
I wanted to scream that it was just water, and that their reaction wasn't fair, but I knew it would only make things worse. The chores were endless. I was responsible for cleaning the entire house, mowing the lawn, and doing all the laundry. Those were things I didn't do when my parents were alive. However, since they weren't alive anymore, and I knew if I didn't do it perfectly, there would be consequences, I had no choice but to do them and try to do them well. Once, I forgot to iron one of Henry's shirts. When he found out, he threw the shirt in my face and told me to get it right, or else I'd be dead. I spent hours ironing every single shirt in his closet, terrified of what would happen if I missed a wrinkle. The worst punishment came when I was 10. It was winter, and the heater had broken. The house was freezing, and I'd accidentally brought snow from my shoes into the hallway after shoveling the driveway.
Do you think this is a barn? Clean it up, fool.
I wanted to grab a mop, but Martha stopped me.
No, you're going to learn to be more careful.
She forced me to kneel on the cold, wet tiles and scrub the floor with a toothbrush. My hands were red and raw from the icy water, but she didn't care. When Henry came home and saw me still scrubbing, he laughed. He laughed even harder after Martha told him what my offense was.
Maybe we should make him sleep out in the shed. That'll teach him to appreciate what he's got.
And that's exactly what they did. That night, they locked me in the shed with nothing but a thin blanket and a bottle of water. The wind howled outside, and I curled up in a corner, trying to stay warm. I could see my breath in the darkness, and my fingers were so numb I couldn't feel them. I didn't sleep that night. I was too scared, too cold, and too angry. At a point, I'd knocked on the door and apologized loudly with whatever strength I had left, but I was ignored. As the years went on, the punishments became more creative. Once, I accidentally broke one of Martha's prized vases while dusting. She made me stand in the corner for hours, holding the broken pieces in my hands. If I dropped even one, she swore to make me regret it. Another time, Henry caught me reading a book during my free time.
You think you've got time to waste on this? You're not here to enjoy yourself, Mr. Little Orphan Boy.
He took the book and tore it in half right in front of me. I didn't cry. I'd learned by then that tears only gave them more satisfaction. Despite everything, I refused to let them break me. I held on to the memories of my parents, the sound of my mom's laughter, the warmth of my dad's hugs. Every time Martha or Henry lashed out at me, I reminded myself that I was stronger than they were. When I turned 16, I started working part-time at a local diner. It wasn't much, but it gave me a taste of freedom. I saved every penny I earned, determined to get out of that house as soon as I could. One night, I came home late after covering a coworker's shift. Martha was waiting for me in the living room.
You think you can just come and go as you please? This is my house. How dare you? Where were you?
Before I could explain, she slapped me across the face. When she slapped me that night, something inside me snapped. I wasn't a child anymore. I wasn't the scared little boy they could intimidate with belts and cold nights in the shed. I decided not to hold back anymore. If you lay a hand on me again, I'll go to the cops and I'll tell them everything. Every single thing you've done to me, I'll let them know. She looked so shocked because she hadn't expected me to talk back to her.
You wouldn't dare.
Try me. Touch me again and see if I won't go to the police now and report you for abuse. For once, Martha didn't yell. She just stood there, staring at me, before storming off to wait for Henry to come home. When Henry finally came home, she told him everything. I regretted my decision when he walked into my room and began hitting me.
You think you're smart, huh? Threatening us like that? You ungrateful orphan. Would you be alive if we hadn't saved you? You're so useless and ungrateful.
Before I could say anything, he grabbed my arm and dragged me down to the basement. Martha followed behind, smiling at how her husband was treating me. He shoved me onto the cold concrete floor of the basement.
Maybe sometime down here will teach you to keep your mouth shut.
Before I could get up, Martha slammed the door shut and locked it. I stayed in that basement for an entire month. The first few days were unbearable. The cold bit into my skin, and the darkness made it impossible to tell if it was day or night. They brought me scraps of food once a day, a piece of stale bread, cold leftovers, and sometimes a small bottle of water. At first, I screamed, pounding on the door and yelling for help, but no one came, and eventually, I stopped. One day, when Martha brought my usual plate of scraps, she forgot to lock the door. I waited until I heard her go back upstairs before I swung into action. My heart was racing as I pushed the door open and stepped into the hallway. For the first time in weeks, I felt fresh air on my face. Martha came downstairs that same time and was shocked to see me.
What do you think you're doing? How did you get out?
When she tried to grab me, I reacted on instinct. I shoved her hard. She stumbled, hitting the floor and crying out in pain, but I didn't wait to see what happened next. I ran out the front door and didn't stop until I reached the police station. I told the officers everything. I showed them the scars on my back. When we returned to the house, Martha and Henry were sitting in the living room like nothing had happened. But the moment the officers put them in handcuffs, Martha broke down.
John, please. We didn't mean it. We're sorry.
She cried loudly and shamelessly as the officers led them away. The police carried out a thorough investigation and even questioned the neighbors. Their trial didn't take long. The evidence was overwhelming, and they couldn't deny their actions. When the judge sentenced them to a year in prison each, Martha turned to me in tears.
We're sorry, John. Please forgive us.
Stop crying. I forgive you both. I will wait for when you both are out so we can start afresh. But of course, I didn't mean it. While they were in prison, I took control of my life and theirs. The court awarded me all the money in Henry's account as compensation for the years of abuse. But that wasn't enough. A friend from the restaurant helped me hack into Martha's account, and I drained every last cent. I returned to the house one final time and took all the cash they had hidden. With their money, I bought a plane ticket and left the country. Starting over wasn't easy, but it was worth it. I enrolled in school, found a new part-time job, and began to rebuild my life. When Martha and Henry were released from prison, they realized they had nothing left. Their bank accounts were empty, their belongings gone. They had no house to return to, and no money left for them. They tried to contact me through emails, social media, even letters, but I ignored them all. They had left me broken, but I had rebuilt myself. And now, they were the ones left with nothing but hopelessness. I later heard when my aunt and uncle were released, they couldn't find good jobs. Henry ended up working as a security guard at a mall, but unfortunately, just 3 weeks into the job, some robbers came. When he tried to stop them, they shot him twice. He survived, but was paralyzed from the waist down, leaving my aunt to take care of him alone while working as a janitor. As for me, I'm doing well in school, and my part-time job pays well. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.